Have you ever wondered why you react so quickly? Why one word, one look, one gesture can suddenly disturb your peace? It's like a switch gets flipped inside you, and before you even realize it, you've spoken, you've explained, you've defended. But afterward, you're left wondering, he whispered, confused and tired. Why did I even react like that? What part of me just got triggered? This is the illusion of the reactive self. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Most of your thoughts, your emotional responses, even your sense of identity, they're not truly yours. They are habits, patterns, inherited programs, downloaded from childhood, reinforced by your environment, shaped by wounds, fears, and invisible expectations. You think you're choosing, but in reality, you're reacting. To be reactive is to live like a puppet, with invisible strings tied to unhealed emotions, unresolved trauma, and unmet needs. People don't control you with power. They control you by knowing which string to pull. A raised voice, a guilt-tripping message, a subtle threat of abandonment. And suddenly, you're dancing the dance they choreographed long ago. But here's the truth they never taught you, he said firmly, reclaiming his center. You are not your reactions. You are not your patterns. You are not your pain. The real you, the sovereign you, lives beneath the noise. And that version of you doesn't react, it chooses. But before you can make real choices, before you can step into your own power, you must confront the ways you've been shaped, without your consent. That's where the journey begins, not by looking outside, but by turning inward and asking the most radical question of all, who am I when I stop reacting? In the next chapter, we'll explore the psychological mechanism that keeps you stuck in roles you never chose, and how the people around you, unknowingly, or sometimes very knowingly, use it to shape your identity. It's time to talk about projection. Carl Jung introduced a concept that might be one of the most unsettling truths in psychology: projection. He wrote, his tone calm yet piercing, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Think about that. Every annoyance, every judgment, every emotional reaction you have toward another person might not be about them at all. It might be a mirror, reflecting the parts of yourself you haven't yet accepted, healed, or even noticed. Projection happens when your unconscious mind takes something internal, an emotion, a fear, a desire, and throws it outward onto someone else. You don't see your anger. You don't see your envy. You don't see your insecurity. You see theirs. You label them. You blame them. You react to them. But what you're really reacting to, his voice lowered, almost in a whisper, is a part of yourself. This is how the unconscious keeps you trapped. You project your own shadow, your hidden, repressed aspects, onto others. And in doing so, you get to avoid looking in the mirror. But projection isn't just a defense mechanism. It's something more subtle, more deceptive. It's a way of building an identity, unconsciously. You start defining yourself by what you are not. You think, I'm not like them. I would never do that. But in rejecting them, you may be rejecting a part of yourself that you're afraid to confront. And here's where it becomes dangerous. Just as you project onto others, others project onto you. They see what they want to see. They assign you a role. A helper, a listener, a savior, a threat, a doormat. And often, without even realizing it, you accept the role. You begin to perform the part they cast you in because you've been taught that it's safer to be accepted than to be authentic. This is how you become trapped in an identity that was never really yours. You spend your life trying to be the version of yourself that makes others comfortable. You say yes when you want to say no. You smile when you feel empty. You offer help when you're the one who needs saving. And slowly, invisibly, you abandon yourself. This abandonment is not loud, it's not dramatic, it's subtle. It happens in the silence of self-betrayal. In every moment you override your truth just to keep the peace. In every conversation where you disappear just to keep someone else from walking away. But here's the truth, he said with gentle defiance. The roles others project onto you are not who you are. They are distortions, reflections of their own unresolved needs, their expectations, their fears. You are not responsible for their story. And the moment you recognize projection for what you throw outward and for what is thrown onto you, you begin to reclaim your power. You start to see through the masks. You begin to ask, what parts of me have I denied just to be loved? And who am I beneath the role I've been playing? This is the beginning of individuation. The process of becoming whole, of stepping out of the role and stepping into your truth. In the next chapter, we'll go deeper into this process because reclaiming your identity isn't just about awareness. It's about energy, psychic energy, and how you've been giving it away every day without even realizing it. Carl Jung didn't view the human mind as a machine that simply processes information. He saw it as an energy system, a living dynamic field of psychological forces. Each thought, each feeling, each decision, drawing from a central source. He called it psychic energy. And just like physical energy fuels the body, psychic energy fuels the soul. But here's the problem, he said, shaking his head softly. Most people have no idea where their energy goes. They feel exhausted, anxious, emotionally drained, but they don't realize why. They blame stress, they blame work, they blame bad sleep. But underneath it all, there's something deeper. They are leaking energy, constantly. Through unconscious reactions, through emotional labor, through psychological entanglement. Every time you react impulsively to criticism, energy is lost. Every time you argue to defend your worth, energy is lost. Every time you try to manage someone else's emotions, energy is lost. You're giving your power away to people who don't even know what to do with it. You think you're being kind, you're being helpful, you're being the bigger person. But what you're really doing, he said with quiet emphasis, is spending your most precious currency, your psychic energy, on things that deplete you instead of strengthen you. And here's what no one tells you. Your energy is not infinite. It is sacred. It is limited. It is yours. When you don't learn to protect it, Others will use it to serve their own unconscious needs. There are people who don't need to dominate you openly. They just need you to keep reacting, keep engaging, keep explaining, keep caring more than they do. That's how they feed. This is why emotional sovereignty matters. To reclaim your energy, you must become selective with your focus, with your attention, with your emotional availability. You must stop rushing to fix everything. Stop answering every message immediately. Stop stepping into every crisis as if it's your job to save the day. Because the truth is, not everything deserves your energy. Not everyone deserves your time. Not every fight is yours to fight. The real cost of being emotionally available to everyone is that you end up being truly available to no one, including yourself. Jung warned, "That which you resist persists." But resistance often looks like constant engagement. You keep trying to fix, keep trying to explain, keep trying to respond, and in doing so, you're trapped in a loop that drains you dry. But what if you pulled your energy back? What if, instead of reacting, you observed? What if you chose to protect your focus as fiercely as you protect your home? Then something would shift. You would begin to notice how much energy you've been wasting on the wrong people, the wrong patterns, the wrong pursuits. And slowly, you would begin to feel something rare in today's world, inner stillness. And in that stillness, you would begin to recover your strength. Because psychic energy, once preserved, begins to regenerate. It restores your clarity, it fuels your creativity, it rebuilds your confidence. But only if you stop giving it away. The next chapter explores what happens when others realize they can no longer control your emotional responses, and how the subtle art of manipulation thrives on your unconscious need to stay connected at any cost. Let's talk about emotional games, hidden motives, and how your availability becomes a weapon used against you. Manipulation doesn't always arrive with sharp words or overt demands. More often, it comes wrapped in silence, in guilt, in carefully calculated pauses, in subtle emotional cues designed to make you respond without thinking. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And it knows exactly where your emotional buttons are because you've shown them. You think you're in control. You think you're choosing to be kind, understanding, compassionate. But often, he said with quiet honesty, you're just trying to avoid discomfort, avoid rejection, avoid abandonment. Manipulation feeds on your predictability. The manipulator doesn't need to dominate you. They only need to count on your reaction. They know you'll respond to guilt. They know you'll explain yourself. They know you'll chase after the connection, even when it's one-sided. And here's the most uncomfortable truth. Most manipulation doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people closest to you. Family, friends, partners, colleagues. People who have learned, sometimes without malice, how to keep you emotionally available to meet their needs. They don't need to threaten you. They only need to look disappointed, or say, "You've changed," or withdraw affection, just enough to make you anxious. And then, right on cue, you come back. You over-explain. You overcompensate. You return to the role. Because deep down, you're afraid of what will happen if you don't. This is the trap. You become addicted to being seen as the good one, the reliable one, the nice one, and that identity becomes your prison. Because to keep it, you must keep performing, keep giving, keep showing up, even when you're empty, even when you're hurting, even when you know it's not fair. Carl Jung warned us about this dynamic. He said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." But here's what he didn't need to add, because it's obvious when you see it. They'll use you to avoid it. Your energy, your empathy, your availability. Because the moment you stop reacting, they are forced to face themselves. And most people aren't ready for that. When you break the pattern, something shifts. You stop responding. You start pausing. You say no, without explanation. And suddenly, the people who were comfortable using you as an emotional mirror can no longer see themselves in you. The manipulator's tool is no longer functional. Their story no longer works. Their narrative about you, you're always there. You never say no. You're the one who fixes things, starts to crumble. And they panic. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stopped playing your part in their story. This is why setting boundaries feels like betrayal. Because people weren't loving you. They were loving the version of you that met their needs. And when you shift, even slightly, that version disappears. What happens next is critical. They might accuse you. They might guilt-trip you. They might try to provoke you, just to get a reaction, any reaction. But if you hold steady, if you remain grounded, if you protect your energy and refuse to re-enter the performance, something extraordinary happens. You become unpredictable. And in that unpredictability, you become powerful. In the next section, we'll explore what happens after you stop reacting, after you stop chasing, after you stop explaining. We'll explore the art of strategic silence and why it dismantles manipulation more effectively than any confrontation ever could. In a world that is constantly loud, where everyone is rushing to speak, to prove, to respond, silence becomes a kind of rebellion. A psychological reset, a sacred refusal to be pulled into noise that doesn't nourish you. But not all silence is created equal. There is the silence of fear, the silence of avoidance, the silence that hides from truth. And then, he said with quiet strength, there is another kind. The silence of power, the silence of clarity, the silence of conscious disengagement. Carl Jung didn't speak of silence in the literal sense, but he did speak of inner stillness, the ability to observe without immediately acting, to listen without the need to interrupt, to feel without the compulsion to escape. Strategic silence is not passive. It is not weakness. It is the deliberate decision to conserve energy, to refuse to react, to protect your center. When you become silent, not out of fear, but out of awareness, something profound begins to happen. People start to unravel, not because you did something to them, but because you stopped doing something for them. You stopped justifying. You stopped explaining. You stopped responding in ways they've come to depend on. And in that sudden absence, their projections collapse. They are no longer relating to you. They're confronted with themselves, with their own guilt, their own control issues, their own emotional dependence. And that, for many, is unbearable. You see, as long as you speak, you're still in the game, still defending, still performing, still part of the emotional dynamic. But when you choose silence, you do something radical. You step out of the game, and you let the pieces fall where they may. This kind of silence confuses people. It unsettles them, because in silence they can no longer predict you. They can no longer manipulate you. They can no longer measure your responses and shape their behavior accordingly. You become, in their world, a mystery. And people fear what they cannot define. But here's the paradox. The more silent you become, the more clearly you begin to see. Patterns that were once invisible become obvious. Games that felt complicated reveal themselves as simple and repetitive. Emotional roles you've been trapped in for years suddenly feel too small for you. Because they are. Strategic silence reveals truth, and truth liberates. It frees you from the obligation to participate in conversations that go nowhere. It releases you from the pressure to fix people who don't want to change. It shields your energy from those who only come to take. And it makes one thing abundantly clear. You owe no one an explanation for your peace. That is not cruelty. It is self-respect. You are not being distant. You are being sovereign. You are not fleeing the world. You are returning to yourself. In the next chapter, we'll explore the inevitable discomfort that follows this return to self. The loneliness, the withdrawal, the guilt, and why it is not the end of your journey, but the beginning of your transformation. Let's talk about sacred solitude. At first, it feels like a loss. You've withdrawn, you've stopped reacting, you've claimed your energy. And suddenly, the silence isn't just external, it's inside you too. No constant messages, no emotional fireworks, no crisis demanding your attention. Just you. And for many, that's terrifying. Because when you've spent your life wrapped in the noise of others, defining yourself through connection, reaction, availability, solitude feels like exile, like something is missing. But what if nothing is missing? What if, for the first time, everything unnecessary has simply fallen away? Carl Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires distance from the collective, from the roles, from the masks, from the noise of other people's expectations. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And who you truly are cannot be discovered while constantly trying to maintain your place in someone else's life. Solitude is not punishment. It is purification. It is the space where your real voice begins to return. Not the voice that answers emails. Not the voice that soothes the fears of others. Not the voice that tries to sound agreeable. But the voice that says, "This is what I feel. This is what I value. This is what I need. This is who I am when no one is watching." In solitude, the projections fall away. The stories drop. The emotional contracts you never agreed to finally expire. And for the first time, you stop managing perceptions and start rebuilding your truth. This can feel like death, the death of a former self, the version of you that was built on pleasing, on surviving, on being needed. But from that death, something is born. Stillness brings clarity, clarity brings strength, and strength brings sovereignty. You begin to see that some people were never truly in your life. They were only connected to the version of you that served them. Now that you are no longer available in that way, they disappear. Let them. Because for every connection that fades in your silence, a deeper connection within you grows. You begin to sense your own presence. You begin to feel whole, even when alone. You begin to realize that peace was never outside of you. It was simply buried beneath your constant participation in dynamics that drained you. This is sacred solitude. Not isolation born from pain, but separation born from clarity. It is the container where your soul begins to stretch out, where your spirit takes up space, where your inner voice becomes louder than the voices of the world. And eventually, you stop craving to be understood. You stop needing to be explained. You stop fearing the judgment that used to control your decisions. You become your own home. In the next and final section, we'll explore what comes after solitude, what rises from the ashes of your former identity, and why the loneliness of the strong is not a curse, but a rite of passage into real freedom. At some point, the silence that once felt unbearable begins to feel sacred. The solitude that once felt like abandonment begins to feel like liberation. And the loneliness that once made you question your path begins to reveal its purpose. You are no longer running from yourself. You are no longer shaping your identity around what others need from you. You are no longer giving away your peace to feel temporarily accepted. You are becoming whole, on your own, without the applause, without the approval, without the performance. This is not the kind of wholeness that comes from perfection. It's the wholeness that comes from integration, from seeing all parts of yourself, the light and the shadow, and choosing not to hide anymore. Carl Jung once said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries." This is the core of emotional sovereignty. You are not here to be flawless. You are here to be authentic. You are not here to please everyone. You are here to live in alignment. You are not here to carry the emotional weight of others. You are here to protect the sacredness of your own soul. And the beautiful irony is this: when you stop trying to be everything for everyone, you finally become something real for yourself. You begin to attract differently. You draw in people who resonate with your truth, not your role. You form connections rooted in mutual respect, not unconscious contracts. You create a life that feels quiet but full, simple but meaningful, uncompromising but open-hearted. And yes, you may still lose people. Yes, you may still be misunderstood. But you will never again abandon yourself just to belong. You will never again apologize for protecting your energy. You will never again betray your intuition for someone else's comfort. You will never again mistake being needed for being loved. Because now, you know the difference. You have walked through the noise. You have faced the projections. You have guarded your psychic energy. You have seen the manipulation for what it is. You have chosen silence over reaction. And you have sat with yourself long enough to realize you are not empty. You are just too available. Now, you are rare. You are focused. You are whole. So, if there's one truth to carry with you as you move forward, let it be this. You do not owe anyone your peace. Not your family, not your partner, not your friends, not even your past self. What you owe, to your soul, to your future, to the truth inside you, is your presence. Your full, unshaken, unapologetic presence. Because in the end, emotional sovereignty is not about walls. It's not about isolation. It's about choosing yourself so completely that even when you stand alone, you feel whole. This is the rebirth. Not loud, not dramatic, but irreversible. You are not fleeing the world. You are returning to yourself. And this time, you are staying. Are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, even hated in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being fully, unapologetically you? If this message touched you, if it made sense in the silence of your own thoughts, write in the comments, "I choose my peace." Let's see how many of us are ready for this transition. And don't forget, watch the next video. It's more important than you think. See you there.